Hello, Year 9, and I hope you've had a good week. I hope you've had a chance to have a look at the first lesson on the life stages and pies. And I hope you've had the opportunity to have a look at the questions and to make sure that you know them. As you can see, what we're going to be having a look at this week is infancy, the first life stage, and we're going to look at physical development. So we're going to look at one of the pies. You have in your facts book your questions. So you've got 5 questions for this week. As I said to you last week, we're going to be going through these during the PowerPoint. So it might be an idea just to pause, have a read through them, make sure that you are familiar with them before you start this session. Okay, so let's just do a little bit of a question recap from last week. So again, it might be an idea if you can just pause this, go through these questions and just check that you're happy that you know them, that you understand them. As I said last week, anything you're uncertain about, anything you're unclear about, or any links that you want sent or any further information, please email me. Okay, lgarrity@johnfernley.org. Okay, so last week, these were the questions. What are the 6 life stages? And I said that this is one of the things that we'll be looking at for the next 2 years. This is one of those things that you really need to be able to know off by heart. So the 6 life stages are infancy, early childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, middle adulthood, and later adulthood. Question 2, the ages for those life stages are 0 to 2, we're going to be looking at today, 3 to 8, 9 to 18, 19 to 45, 46 to 65, and then 65 plus. Again, for question 3, pies is one of those that you need to know off by heart because it's referred to a lot during the course, and pies stands for physical, intellectual, emotional and social. And although we look at them separately in our lessons, remember that we need to think about them all together. So physical often links to intellectual, for example, emotional to social, and so on. Question 4, growth means physical growth, and development means any other development. So for example, learning new skills, new ideas, and that goes on throughout all of the life stages. Well done if you have gone through those and that you know them. Obviously, because you've got your facts book at home, you can go back over these. So if there's some that you are less certain about, you can obviously go back and just recheck. Okay, so for today and this week, we are looking at infancy, which is the first life stage. So it's the stage between the ages of 0 and 2 years old. And we're going to be looking at one of the pies. We're going to be looking at physical change. Again, you might just want to pause this for a moment. You've got in the image here an image of a newborn and an image of a 2-year-old. There's an awful lot of change that takes place between the ages of 0 and 2. Although it's a very short life stage, lots and lots of things happen. You might want to just pause it now and just jot down or think about some of the changes, some of the things that happen, that take place between the ages of 0 and 2. Okay, so you might have thought of things like between the ages of 0 to 2, there's lots of physical growth. You can see that on the pictures. You can see that one of the obvious things that happens is that there is a lot of growth, physical growth. There's also a lot of development. So by the age of 2, a 2-year-old is able to talk and say lots of words. A 2-year-old is able to walk. They are able to run. They are able to throw a ball. They're able to do lots of things involving coordination. They also may be starting to do quite a lot of things themselves. So for example, they'll be able to walk up some stairs. They may have started brushing their teeth by themselves with supervision. they will be able to feed themselves. So you can see that lots and lots and lots of changes happen, and that's because between the ages of 0 and 2 there's lots of physical growth, as you can see, but there's also lots of brain growth, lots of intellectual growth as well as emotional and social development. So all of the pies are developing at this time. To give you an idea of physical growth, by the age of 3, a child will be double their birth height. So that gives us an indication of how rapid this growth is. And as it says here, their physical development links closely with all of their other pies. So in infancy, when we talk about physical development, there are some key words that we need to understand. This is question 1 for this week. And the 2 types of physical development are gross motor development and fine motor development. And what they mean is gross motor development are the skills that are learnt to control and coordinate the big muscles in the body, such as the arms and legs. So when we think about gross motor development, what we mean are developing the big muscles. So really arms and legs. So an example of gross motor development would be learning to walk, learning to crawl, learning to run. We're using the big muscles to do that. And that's the first thing that a baby needs to grow, is the strength in the big muscles. Fine motor development are the skills learnt to control and coordinate the small muscles. And the small muscles are things like your hands, fingers, toes. And these are the things that develop secondary, because we need the big muscles first and the fine muscles or the small muscles second. So things like holding a spoon, for example, being able to paint or use a crayon, we develop secondary. We develop a little bit later. I've put on here to think of some examples of gross motor development and fine motor development, and we're going to refer to this a little bit further on. We've already talked about some examples here, and one of the key things that when we're thinking about physical development is thinking about how it links to motor development. So on this page you can see some examples of gross and fine motor development. You might want to pause this for a moment and just have a look at the pictures. Which of these are gross motor development? Which of these are fine motor development? And do you think that there are some that might require both? Okay, so if we have a look, we've got running. Running is using our gross motor skills, our big muscles. Okay, in the middle at the top here we've got crawling. Again, that's the big muscles. At the bottom's an interesting one because it's cycling. Now, do you think cycling is gross motor skills, fine motor skills, or both? If you said both, you are spot on, because we need the big muscles, so the big muscles on our legs and our arms, but we also need our small muscles for things like using the brake, for example, okay, for helping to steer. So that's an example of both. Skipping is an example of both, because again, we're using the big muscles, our gross motor skills, but we're also using fine motor skills. We're using our hands, we're using our fingers to hold on to the rope. If we look at the 2 examples on the end, the building blocks here is using our fine motor skills. We're using our hands, we're using our fingers to be able to pick up the blocks and place them. And at the bottom, learning to use a spoon is our fine motor skills. Again, at any point, you can pause, you can replay this, you can double check your understanding. So as we can see on the previous one, riding a bicycle is using our gross motor skills and our fine motor skills, because we need to use our big muscles and we need to use our small muscles. So we need to use our legs, we need to use our arms, but we also need to use our fingers, okay, and our hands. Now, I've put on the right-hand side to link this to pies. What pies do you think learning to ride a bicycle helps to develop? Again, you might just want to pause this for a moment and jot some things down. If you said that learning to ride a bicycle helps to develop all of the pies, you are spot on. It helps to develop us physically, because if we ride a bicycle, we are improving the health of our heart. Exercise is good for us, so it's helping us physically. It's helping us intellectually, because learning to ride a bike, we're learning a new skill, so our brain is thinking. It might also help us emotionally, because we feel good about ourselves. We feel a sense of achievement because we're riding a bicycle, we're learning something, we feel good about ourselves, we feel happy. And it might help us socially, because we might then go out with our family, might go out with our friends and so on. So it might help us socially as well. And the reason I put this example here is to show that many things link both gross and fine motor skills and our pies together. Okay, so we need to think about them as a whole. Now, if we have a look at this slide, this is an opportunity for you to practice a little bit more your understanding of gross and fine motor skills. If we think about the example that we've just looked at, when we've looked at riding a bicycle and how that develops our gross and fine motor skills, we've got some examples on here. Now, some of these are gross motor skills, for example, walking, jumping, running up here, for example, and some are examples of fine motor skills such as painting or using a knife and fork. If you pause this for a moment, have a look at one of them and just go through, are they practicing gross motor skills or fine motor skills? But also, how does this particular activity develop somebody's pies? So for example, if you chose playing piano develops our fine motor skills because we're using our hands, our fingers and our feet and toes. And if we think about the pies development, it's developing us intellectually because it's brain development. We're learning new skills. So pause it and have a look at one of them and do exactly what I've just done with your example and then carry on. Okay, so you can see on here that it's talking about growth patterns, and growth patterns, the questions that link to that are questions 2, 3 and 4 for this week. So when we talk about growth patterns for infancy, the first one is top to toe, and top to toe development means that an infant's development starts from the head and works down the back and then to the legs. So top, so as in the top of the body, down to the bottom. And the reason for that is that the baby's brain and then their neck and back muscles need to develop first. Firstly, because the brain needs to develop because the baby is learning so many new things and so many new skills. But the muscles in the neck and the back then need to develop first so that a baby can lift its head, they can roll over, before they then crawl and walk. Inner to outer means that alongside that, a baby will gain control of their torso, which means their body, before their arms and legs and before their hands and fingers. So an infant will gain control of their body first, which means they can then roll over, for example. Then they will gain control of their arms and legs, which means that they will be able to push themselves up or crawl and eventually walk. And then gradually it moves out to their hands, their fingers, feet and toes. All babies follow the same pattern, but at different rates. So they will follow the same pattern of development, but at their own rate. Now, occasionally, some babies, or sometimes babies won't crawl, for example, they'll go straight to walking, okay? But as a general rule, babies follow the same pattern, but they do so at their own rate. So not every baby learns to do something by a particular time. Those are all questions. That's question 2, 3 and 4 for this week. The last question, question 5, is what physical changes happen in infancy. We're going to cover this next week as well, because we're going to tie this in with our work on early childhood. Now you can see on here you've got some pictures. Again, you might just want to pause this for a second. What kind of physical changes can you see happening here? So which ones, what can you name? That's the first thing. The second thing, can you put them in order? So which do you think a baby does first? For example, down to, there's 6 here, so 1 to 6. Just pause it for a second and see if you can get the order correct. Okay, so if you said that the first thing a baby learns to do is to roll over, you are absolutely spot on. Remember that physical development is from top to toe, inner to outer. So the first thing a baby is able to do is roll over when they get control of their back muscles and neck muscles. The second thing a baby is able to do is to crawl. Normally babies will learn to crawl before they are able to sit up by themselves. Generally a baby will be able to sit up by themselves by the age of 9 or 10 months. Often a baby can crawl before then, but if you put them the other way round, sometimes that happens as well. It's usually at a similar time that babies crawl and sit up, because you need a lot of strength in your neck and back muscles and your leg muscles. There's a lot of coordination in terms of being able to sit up independently. You also need to have a lot of strength in your arms and legs to be able to crawl. So 2 and 3 are at similar times. One of the things I'm going to ask you to do this week is to ask what age you first started rolling over, crawling and sitting up, and just see if you can find which one that you were able to do first. Okay, so the 4th one is holding a spoon and feeding yourself correctly. That's the 4th one, because it's a fine motor skill. Okay, it's quite a tricky skill, that. 5th one is learning how to walk. Generally babies will learn how to walk at about 13-14 months, usually by 18 months. And the last one, obviously, once a baby is able to walk, they can then run. So number 6 is a baby learning to run. So this week, go through the key questions. There are 5 key questions, so just go through those, check you understand them. Also, if you need to recap the ones from last week, please do. There are some extension activities as well. Please have a look at that if you can. It would be really helpful if you could maybe create your own sort of diagram of physical changes in infancy. So find out things like what age you were when you started crawling, or sitting up, or were able to ride a bike, or were able to feed yourself with a spoon, or anything, any of the milestones. So any of those would be brilliant, and if you're able to jot those down, that'd be fabulous. Again, any questions or anything you want me to check, just get in touch. You know my email address, it's lgeraghty@johnfernley.org. Also, if you get the opportunity, if you go on to 4 on Demand, there was a series which was called The Secret Life of 4 and 5-year-olds. It's on the extension activities, but for next week. But if you get a chance this week to have a look at it, it would be brilliant preparation for next week. And this is a series, and it follows 4 and 5-year-olds at a nursery. If you get the chance, even if you just watch 10 minutes of it, it will be really useful, because you can have a look then at their physical development, and also some of the development of all of their pies, and also the development of their gross and fine motor skills. So there's lots of additional things if you have the opportunity this week. Please have a look at the extension things, but if you can. But the main thing is to make sure that you're happy with those questions and that you understand those 5 key questions. Any concerns, or if you need any sort of guidance with anything, please let me know. Have a lovely week, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.